For everything between pavement, drainage, the elevation, that is really very low. Cost about $1 million put a shovel in. It's ridiculous. It's almost like
All right, where are you?
Am I coming?
Yeah.
That's good.
Get all the way over and then you're like this way and you'll turn Good, how are you?
They don't send everybody out. No, it's not my girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah, likely story. I'm going to spread it. We need to expand. Something else.
Compared to what? Ready to go?
Okay. I tried.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out in such a loud night in our rain. I'm Mark Cutting, the town manager. Just some background tonight. We, in June of 2012, the town council adopted a moratorium for land use plan amendments to the comprehensive plan of the town. In August, they asked the town management company to go ahead and to prepare amendments to correct issues that we have with the comprehensive plan as it relates to Okeechobee Boulevard and Southern Boulevard, because we see both roads functioning together in order to make a plan that'll make some sense for the town in the future. And so what we went about doing 2 workshops. This is the second. We held the first workshop on December 19th, and we notified a lot of the property owners on Okeechobee. The emphasis was Okeechobee Boulevard, but we can talk about both. And of course, we've noticed the meeting on the 19th so that people could come out and basically give us their input. This is the second meeting, and we're gearing this one towards Southern, although we let people from Okeechobee know as well, so if they want to come out and talk about Okeechobee, both boulevards are open to discussion. We have a very brief presentation that Jim's going to go through, probably take 5 to 10 minutes just to give you some background on the Southern Boulevard area. And then we're going to shut up, and what we want to do is we want to hear everything that you have to tell us. It's basically, we want to be a sponge, and we want to hear everybody's opinion as it relates to Southern or Okeechobee or both. So with that, I would ask everybody, we don't have a big crowd tonight, I think, because of the weather. We were going to have people to come up here so we can get your comments on the recorder. But I think if you wanted to speak from your chair, you could probably do that too, whatever you feel more comfortable doing, okay? So with that, Jim, please take it away.
Thank you, Mark. As Mark said, the purpose of the workshop tonight is to discuss land use activities along the Southern Boulevard corridor. We're in the process of writing some future land use plan amendments, and we want to try to get opinions and recommendations from property owners along the corridor to try to incorporate into the council's plan. What's going to happen tonight is that I will attempt to summarize some of the existing conditions along the corridor, and as well as some of the plans and programs that are that are currently on the books and or upcoming. And following that, we'd like to get, have a lively discussion, we hope, involving you members of the audience in terms of expressing ideas and concepts for the quarter. There was a series of handouts at the back, and I'd just like to briefly run through those so you can understand how to use them during the presentation. The first one is a map of the corridor, and the purposes of this workshop were defining the corridor as the corporate extent of Waxahachie Groves from Southern Boulevard up to Collecting Canal. The second map is a list of, a location map really for all of the classified agricultural lands that are located within the corridor. And you can see that there's 5 different agricultural categories, each of which we have assigned to each of the parcels along the corridor. The second of the maps is an inventory of commercial properties located along the corridor. The properties that have a solid color pink are existing commercial properties. The properties that are outlined in the pink have current land use and zoning designations that are currently vacant. And the property that has the pink and the blue pattern on it is a multiple land use, a 70-acre parcel that was recently approved and assigned a mixture of commercial low office, commercial low, and institutional land uses. And I'll get into some details on that project further in the presentation. The next map is the third map is a list of the existing residential properties along the corridor. Those are properties that are designated residential by the property. And currently have a dwelling unit on site. The next map is the future land use map of the town, and that identifies all of the current future land use designations of properties, not only throughout the town, but specifically along the Southern Boulevard corridor. And finally is a table that includes specific definitions of the uses allowed in each of the town's future land use categories. So if you see a property along Southern Boulevard that you're interested in, look at the color of the designation and go to the table, and then you can see what land use types are allowed by the town council.
Is it fair to ask a question here?
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah, on with it, I guess it's map number 3, commercial in the pink.
Right.
We got down at the far west, I guess that big chunk there, that's the paintball.
Yes.
And then we get to our future land use map. And the paintball seems to be the same color as our R5.
That's true. On the town's future land use map, there are a couple of parcels in town that have actual commercial uses on them, but were assigned our 5 future land use designations by the town, making them not legal uses if they have previous approvals.
What is the property appraiser map show there?
The property appraiser's definition is commercial.
Because I know that's what some of us call Masline miracle.
Well, that was originally approved as a putt-putt golf course, right?
You're right.
Yeah. And when it was converted to paintball, I'm not really sure. And don't know that it got an approval to do that. I'm not positive about that.
Here goes the miracle.
Yeah. So there's two other uses on the eastern part of the port, the tractor sales and the farmer's water retail nursery are existing commercial uses. They do not have commercial use recreation fee.
Is that going to be rectified or?
Well, we can. I mean, that's something that we can take care of during this process.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Sorry.
That's okay. If not me, anybody that has a question during the course of the presentation, is free. Okay, now, this is an existing, the existing land use map that is currently in the town's comprehensive plan, and you can make a comparison between this map and the handout map. You can see that the uses are quite different than those that are identified on this map. But using this map as a way of generalizing land uses throughout the town, this table graphically indicates the extent of agricultural properties and single-family residential properties that currently exist in the town. So 82% of the town's land area falls in one of those two land use categories. Commercial is less than 1%, and I guess vacant properties is another one that we should highlight, with 901 acres of vacant property in the town. Okay, as I pointed out earlier, for the purposes of this discussion, we're looking at the corridor is extending all the way north to Collecting Canal. And updating the actual land uses within the corridor itself, we used Palm Beach County property appraisers data and the land use designations that the property appraiser has given to each of the properties. And you can see that agriculture is far and away the predominant use in the corridor, with 396 acres out of 695, or 57% of the total. As with the town as a whole, residential single family is the second highest use, commercial, although still a relatively low percentage, has a much higher percentage than it does in the town as a whole. Okay, now this was one of your handouts. This map shows the lands that are classified agricultural by the Palm Beach County property appraiser. And as I said earlier, when the property appraiser classifies lands, he also assigns it a specific land use category. And there are currently 5 categories within the corridor: crops, grazing, orchard and groves, equestrian properties, and nursery properties. And if you look at the map, it's interesting to see how some of these uses have a tendency to locate in close proximity to each other within the same category. As far as crops go, there's only the one large parcel which is located to the west of the extension of A Road. Property category 2, grazing, you can see that most of the grazing properties are located primarily between B and D roads, with two large additional parcels just east of E Road. As far as orchards and groves, there's only one parcel in the border, and that's a small parcel located west of E. Now, The equestrian parcels are generally clustered east and west of F and north of Citrus. There are a couple of additional parcels on the east side of B and on the west side of D, but the predominant equestrian area in the corridor is located over just north of the Waxahachie Groves Park on those fairly large parcels. And the nursery parcels are generally located on the west side of D and F roads. Now, as far as the residential parcels, there are a total of 59 residential parcels in the corridor, containing a total of 61 dwelling units. And the zoning district that encompasses most of the corridor is agricultural residential, and the minimum lot size in the agricultural residential district is 5 acres. However, 92% of the residential parcels are less than 5 acres, with 51% of the parcels are less than 1/2 acre size. So you can see that even most of the residential parcels are inconsistent with the current AR agricultural residential zoning district. And in addition to the residential units that are located on residential designated parcels, there are an additional 21 residential units that are located on parcels that have an agricultural designation. So there's a grand total of 82 residential units in the quarter. And as you can see, the residential properties are concentrated primarily between C and E roads. That's what I would call the residential core area of the corridor. Now, in terms of commercial properties, commercial is one of the, I guess, primary topics that we would like to discuss tonight. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time running down the corridor from the west to the east. We're talking about each of these parcels individually. Parcel number 1, which is located just to the west of A Road Extended, is the Hot Shots paintball parcel, and that's just under 20 acres in size. And as I said, it's an existing commercial use, but it does not have commercial land use designation or commercial zoning designation. Parcel number 2 is located at the northwest corner of B Road and Southern Boulevard. And that...
Just want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You said they were zoned to be able to have a lighting green there?
They got when the property was in the county, it was assigned a commercial recreation zoning designation and got approved for a driving range and an R3 golf, platform.
So what's the difference between what they're using it for now, still outdoor recreation versus the golf?
No, I'm not saying that they're not allowed to do it. I'm saying that the existing use is inconsistent with the town's future land use designation. When the town was incorporated, the town changed the land use designation on that property from commercial recreation to rural residential plot.
Why would the town feel it was a benefit to take somebody's property usage rights away from them that existed with the county and tell them they can't do what they used to do before, and you guys were here?
I can't answer that since I was not involved in that decision, but they can still do Now, whether or not they can do the paintball, I don't know, because that's not the use that was approved by the county.
Well, all my use has been approved in the county, and I have licenses that date back to 2004, if you're gonna bring up that issue. So I don't understand if it was approved in the county and you had licenses from 2004 to 2013. He's right about that question. How can the town go back and ask about
It
those
wasn't
uses?
approved for paintball.
We should change the zoning for what they could do, even if it wasn't approved for paintball, you took the people's rights away about what they could do with that property. And he valued it a lot.
That's covered in the comprehensive plan.
All my feed store licenses were part of the county.
Licenses aren't the same as land use.
I know, who has the right to take someone's rights to their property away because the town got incorporated from what it had before the town was here? Who's the God that told somebody they could use the
Exactly.
property the same way that they could?
That-
No, because the county.
That property owner has the right to do what he was approved to do.
He has the right to do what he was approved to do. I'm glad you just said that. Thank you.
Yeah. Just curiosity.
Yeah, well, that's the case. He got approval from the county to do a putt-putt golf course in Durham. So that approval comes forth into the town's comprehensive plan. Now, as far as I know, he did not receive approval to do paintball.
Well, he would have and could have if he didn't change the rules on how he could use his property. And it's still outdoor entertainment.
Well,
I mean, I don't know the guy, I have no
that's
best
not
interest in the question,
It's not a guarantee that he could have gotten approval.
but it's guaranteed he can't now.
It's a legal non-conforming use, as far as I know. I could be wrong.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. That's okay. Parcel number 2 was recently the subject of a future land use plan amendment, along with the Palm Beach County State College parcel, which actually wraps around parcel number 2 on the east side of Gate Road. Parcel number 2 is called Waxahachie Rose Commons. It's recently been submitted for zoning approval, and under the comprehensive plan, it has the potential to build out at around 95,000 square feet of commercial space. Parcel.
Excuse me. You took the guy in parcel 1's rights away from it, and you gave it to the guy who has parcel number 2? For what justification is there for that? How can you do that? In what person's world is that just?
The property owner for parcel number 2 came in with an application for a future land use plan amendment, and it was approved by the town council.
Great, so you decided to expand his land usage rights, well, why would you take it away from another guy at the same time you're giving someone else the right to do more?
I don't believe that the rights were taken away from them.
Sure they were, if you're telling them they can't get approved for what they were doing before.
No, I'm saying that he was approved, they can do what they were approved. Period.
Okay. Go ahead.
They can do what they were approved for under the county, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Jim, explain the difference between when somebody gets a license to do something and what the land use and zoning designation is, that they're not together.
Well,
The license is not a land use.
So you can take a parcel and surround it completely by commercial and exclude a parcel?
No, you have to get it changed and then go through, get the land use and the zoning changed to come into conformity and pay the correct taxes on commercial property.
The town is charged with adopting a land use plan for the entire town. It assigns land use designations to each parcel in town. In turn, it assigns a zoning designation. Now, if a property owner wants to get a business tax receipt do a license, he would come into the town, and the town would make a determination as to whether or not he can perform that business under the town's land use and zoning designations. The applicant for the business tax receipt would take that determination to the county and get a business tax receipt to perform that business.
Yeah. In the bottom line of what you're saying, that people that have an existing use, like paintball, it's on residential land. Presumably, they're paying residential taxes. If they wanted to come into the town as a commercial property, they make an application for a change to commercial property. One of their arguments would be, hey, we took over from a use that was approved by the county. We're not that much different. We're still recreational. But to come in line with the town's comprehensive plan, they would have to make an application to become commercial property. I mean, that's the bottom line. Nobody's taken away the rights. It's just that they haven't brought their property in line with the rights that they're using it for.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, nobody's taking away the rights that they were previously approved for.
But once you file that paperwork with the town, sir, then you have to get 4 votes from the town council in order to keep the same thing you were doing.
And if you don't, then you lose it.
That's correct.
Okay.
But you gotta realize that you've been getting a free ride on taxes.
I've been trying to pay them.
Okay, Jim, close.
Okay, yeah. Okay, the property number 3 is sort of a special case along the border. It's been assigned the multiple land use, future land use category, which actually consists of 3 separate land use designations on the property. There's commercial low office, and institutional. And along with the future land use map designation, there was text incorporated into the language of the comprehensive plan that specifically limited the amount of commercial space that can be developed on the property. And that is 103,000 square feet of retail space, 44,000 square feet of office space, and 128-bed assisted living facility. And in addition to that, there's language in the comprehensive plan that mandates a 300-foot buffer along the south side of Collecting Canal. So there cannot be any development further north of that 300-foot buffer. All of the land uses that are approved on that site have to go below that 300-foot buffer.
I have a question. It's probably stupid, I don't really understand. The last time we had come to a meeting where the college was to be discussed, we understood that parcel 2, or basically the, I guess what you call it, western portion of B Road, was where the actual college was going to go, with the forward portion of number 2. It was going to be 80 acres, not a large portion. Are we saying that now it's on number 3, or is it still on number 2, or why is number 2 so small?
Well, okay, number 2 is small is because I'm just showing commercial property.
College wraps around.
Yeah.
Okay, so it takes basically of those 3 parcels,
Right.
it takes that back half portion.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the college parcel right now.
okay.
That entire square
Right, okay.
was originally, that originally had the same land use designation as the crosshatch.
Okay.
It was given multiple land use designation for approximately 100,000 square feet of retail, 150,000 square feet of office,
Right.
and 19 residential units on the northern portion. The recent land use plan amendments rescinded that multiple land use designation and reverted to the RR5 on the a 75-acre parcel because you can do schools in R5.
Okay.
Okay? And the balance of the property, 21 acres, was assigned commercial low at that same time.
Okay.
So the multiple land use was taken off, and the commercial was added on the corner.
Gotcha.
Jim, what's happening to the piece that's trapped in the middle of those two? That don't have any designation. Between the one that's striking where the college is going, there's 63 parcels in the center of that.
I mean, on the west side of you? Or on the east side?
Groceries.
Right here. Jim, right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Each of those.
Yeah, those.
All those commercials surround my house.
Those are existing properties that are not part of the applications for the land use amendments.
Fair to assume if whoever owned those applied for commercial, they get them, instead of letting them sandwiched in the middle of everything else?
Well, I think it's possible that they could make some good arguments whether or not they will get it. That's up to the council to make that decision. Okay, now parcels 4, 5, and 6, the small parcels along Okeechobee are all, I mean, are all vacant at this time. Parcel 7 is the Shell gas station. Parcel 8 is a vacant parcel. Parcel 9 is the Waxahachie AG supermarket. Parcel 10 is the post office. Parcel 11 is Tom's West Plaza. Parcel 12 is really a vacant area where the truck windows are currently being stored. Moving on to east of D, parcel number 13 is the Wellington Animal Hospital. Parcel
Good
number
name.
Sorry. It should be called across from Wellington.
Parcel number 14 is a vacant parcel, but that has an approval on it. The development is called Southern Crossing, and it's approved for 37,408 square feet of bank and professional office uses. Progressing farther east to the east side of the park is Grove Medical Plaza, which is an office complex that is currently under construction, 26,000 square feet maximum. Parcel 16 is the Farmer's Daughter Produce Market, and parcel 17 is Everglades Farm Building. So that's a parcel by parcel look at what is either existing or has been approved along the border in terms of commercial entrances. Now, just a little bit of current update in terms of what's happening with Southern Boulevard. Southern Boulevard is currently a 4-lane divided highway. It's part of the state strategic intermodal system, which is a integrated system of interstate highways, major roadways, airports, and seaports that the state has deemed to be critical to the economic future of the state and also critical to in cases of emergency. There are during its extent through the town, there are 2 traffic signals located at B and F roads, and there are 7 median cuts along the road. Current traffic counts between B and F are approximately 34,000 vehicles per day, and from F to Forest Hill, approximately 43,000 trips per day. And as you probably are all aware, DOT has plans to expand the roadway from 4 to 6 lanes from Lion Country Safari east to Forest Hill Boulevard in the near future. The project development report was recently completed in March of 2012. The design stage, including identification of drainage pond locations, is currently funded and scheduled for completion in September of 2015. Right-of-way acquisition, including the purchase of the drainage pond areas, is also currently funded and is scheduled for completion by late 2015. Construction is scheduled to commence in 2016, but at this point is not entirely funded. One of the key points I'd like to make in terms of land use along the corridor is that DOT has identified a whole series of potential drainage ponds on the north side of Southern Boulevard, and they haven't quite got to the level yet where they have determined specifically where these drainage ponds are going to be located. That decision is going to be made relatively soon, and will be part of the right-of-way acquisition process. So that's going to be coming up fairly soon, and certainly could have some impact on future development along the corridor.
The DOT listened attentively and talked with the district about an alternative to the drainage ponds. Do you know if that is still out there, subject to maybe rerouting or other changes, or is it really not on the table at this point?
I'm not sure about that. I talked to DOT today. They just had a meeting today, which they didn't make me privy to in terms of some of the decisions they're going to be making very shortly on where the ponds are going to be located. So
no, the drainage ponds are their conventional way of doing it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
That's right. So we should know soon on that.
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
I think Todd brought this up. Is it true that when they go to 6, they're going to get rid of the median cut at D? So if you were coming south on D, the only thing you can do is go west on Southern.
That I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay, because that's one reason the town really needs to get D developed as its.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure I check into that.
D needs a traffic light.
D needs a light. Actually, we were promised one at the entrance of the plaza, but that was before B and F.
Okay, I'll check on both of those questions.
Jim?
Yes.
Well, I had attended one of the workshops that was held with the DOT, and the district, John referred to this, but the district had spoken with them about locating the ponds closer to collecting canal so that they could be used as water storage for the town, because we do need that, during the dry periods. And the theory was that we could possibly purchase more land and preserve wetlands in that area, and kill more than one bird with the same stone, have some recreational area. And so if they're going to be buying land, they said certainly they would want to purchase, they would be happy to purchase it, further north where it would be less expensive. And they also, but they said that they would have to have the town's approval in order to do that. So I don't know where that stands right now.
Well, I have seen, as a matter of fact, in my office, I have a series of maps along the corridor that identifies all of the potential locations. And it's pretty obvious to me that they were looking to locate them north. more towards the canal.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's good. That's what we wanted, yeah.
No, no, no. Up to the northern part of the corridor, on the south part of the canal, south side of the canal, as opposed to right along south. That's what it appears to me. I tried to find that out today too, and that was the subject of the meeting they were having today as well, but I hopefully can find that out.
You guys do have something to learn, so we'll let it go.
Well,
Well, the better question is if you do have influence, which would the town council prefer that they're gonna go? Take properties on Southern Boulevard or push it back toward the canal? Must have a feel for which way to lean.
well, I think if we can combine them, as Mr. Ryan just said, to also enhance our water supply and some of our wetlands areas, that would be the preferred alternative, I would believe.
That's all it is.
That's what you prefer. Well, I'm just so that's my opinion. Well, it could be. I mean, they've identified multiple potential parcels all along the corridor, but I don't know out of all of those parcels how many they're going to select, where they're going to be, and how large they're going to be. That determination that's still to be made, and it's going to be made during the current phase that they're in right now. It's going to be part of the land acquisition process.
I was only asking, again, I don't have vested interest, but I heard that one of the ponds you were going to go right where Farmer's Daughter is. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you want to write that business out and take it away from the community if you were pushing back? So that's why I wanted.
Back on me.
Well, it's just going to be a pond, it's going to be a water retention park they're talking about, isn't there? Wiping out a business everybody likes to go to.
Merle wants to sell it.
Well, I'll also see if I can find out.
What's that? Yeah, everybody had a pond.
I'll also see if I can find out what their decision-making process is and bring the town an opportunity to participate in
Jim, I've got a question about the future plans on the expansion of Southern Boulevard from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. As I understand it, in the future, further west of us, they're going to put in a landfill. And that landfill will increase tractor truck traffic on Southern Boulevard to probably 80 trucks an hour. In my opinion, the citizens of Waxahachie Grove that use Southern Boulevard predominantly as their way in and out east and west, the traffic out there is horrendous now. When you go to 6 lanes, add 80 semis an hour, the traffic is going to be compounded that much more than it is currently. Is there any thought as to the regulation so that the residents will be able to use only the inside lane and restrict you laugh, but and restrict
You know, when you get a 15 lanes behind,
I've got the
the
floor.
people using the lanes, it doesn't matter.
Excuse me, I've got the floor. Thank you. And restrict traffic for the semis to the 2 outside lanes. That would give citizens that want to travel east or west a way to get around the slower moving trucks that tend to go side by side at a stoplight if they stop. And you know, then they take off and you've got people that are trying to jockey in between the trucks to make headway.
Who's going to
That's all
enforce
I'm
this?
saying.
Are you going to enforce it?
No, I'm not going to enforce
Well,
it.
then who is?
But the police have done an excellent job
Oh, yeah.
on slowing down what's been going on out there now with them running the red lights.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
This guy's had his hand up for
This guy's-
Yeah, go ahead, I'm
90
Go ahead,
minutes.
Kevin. Kevin.
I just really want to know about these drainage ponds, basically. Is there any way somebody can go to the town council or go to the town and basically request where they've requested these? You mentioned that there were certain ones that they had marked as possible locations. Can the people in the town basically get a list of what those locations are so that we can know what parcels they're looking at?
I have the maps.
Okay, can we as town citizens get those to know? Because if it happens to be our particular parcel, I think we'd like to know that they're suggesting our particular parcel for that. Is it possible we can get those maps?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
Just to know what they're considering, because eventually they're gonna have to weed it out and say, well, not this one, but this one. But eventually, some of us would like to know, gee, I didn't know my parcel was being considered.
anything, let me jump in, anything that the town pays for and they pay in falls under government and sunshine, put in a public records request, you got it.
they don't have the specific sites identified. What they have done is taken a look at, they've prepared some aerial photographs of the corridor and generally identified a whole series of parcels all along the corridor.
Okay, but
where it could go. I mean, they haven't made the decision yet as to where they are. I feel pretty strongly that.
how would that impact the parcels that are not part of that? And how would we as town citizens get involved to say, you know, well, this is okay, or this is not?
Well, what I can,
Well, they're in the process of doing their design now.
yeah,
When they have their design ready, they will have a series of workshops, so people can come out.
Like this?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And that would be the time when you need to really come out and give your input into those designs.
Okay.
yeah.
But in the meantime, you have some idea of where they're gonna put some.
Well, it's not really an idea of where, it's just, it's a look at the corridor and they have identified potential sites and there's many times the number identified that they're actually going to use. That these are just areas where they could go. So I'm assuming that where they would go are going to be some of those sites. But which ones, no, but that's going to be, they told me today that decision is going to be very soon. So they're going to be ready to.
I'm anticipating from what you said, and I know that you're not speaking for the town council, but they would more than likely be using vacant land to put these ponds rather than places that have been, got housing units on it or whatever.
Well, I haven't, I didn't spend a lot of time perusing those maps, but the ones that I saw, the ones I did look at, appeared to be all vacant.
You couldn't use eminent domain to get a drainage pond, do you? No.
Yes.
Well, up close, but not way back. Right next to the road, I bet they could, but jumping over, I bet they can't. I hope they can.
Just to put it into some perspective, you know, when you go east on Southern Boulevard from State Road 7, I think you'll count 2 drainage ponds on that whole stretch of road. So, you know, just get your mind around that. How many are they going to need between A road and F road? Maybe 1.
So they still have to do some swale and drainage.
Well, yeah, it's all underground.
Yeah.
And when you drive by on Southern Boulevard, you see those ponds. They're about 2 acres maybe, and they're dry ponds.
Well, we'll keep in touch with DOT and try to keep it current on the status.
And while you're there on drainage, Ron's not here, is he? No.
Yeah, he just went to the restroom.
Ariel?
Right back.
Yeah, he's not there.
Oh, okay, he brought this up to me the other day, is that, remember during Isaac, when we had all the floods, the people between Southern and Collecting Canal had a lot of flooding even after the swales dried because of the way it was built. So that's got to be kept in mind too. Draining State Road 80 is one thing, but you can't do it at the expense of the people that live between Collecting Canal or Wade to the post office.
And
Yeah, you couldn't even get into here during after Isaac. I mean, driving into this place was
Yeah.
impossible. The water out front was incredible high.
Okay, and the last point I want to make in terms of development along the corridor is that central water and sewer is available along Southern Boulevard. This is the town's current future land use map, and shows the future land use destination of all the parcels along Southern Boulevard, including the most recent comprehensive plan amendment, that the area that says refer to special policy 1.15.4, that's the policy that directs the growth on the Palm State College site. The parcel at the corner was recently given the commercial language designation as part of the State College plan amendment. Property on the east side of the end is the multiple land use parcel that we previously discussed. What's that? That's the elementary school. Okay, in addition to the future land use map, the comprehensive plan has 9 written elements to it, 5 of which contain policies that can or absolutely do affect development along the corridor. The land use, transportation, conservation, recreation, open space, and housing elements all contain language that in some manner address land use activities. The principal element, of course, is the future land use element, and I've highlighted a couple of the recurring themes, if you will, in the future land use element that pertain to development along the corridor. First and foremost, which is to buffer residential uses from non-residential uses. That language to that effect is in almost all of the town's comprehensive plan elements. Next is to encourage a rural style commercial center along the Southern Boulevard corridor. And following up with that is to limit new commercial development to the south of East Citrus and Tangerine. Next is to endorse a substantial equestrian facility along the corridor. After that is to consider extending Tangerine, Citrus, all the way across the extent of the town from A Road extended all the way to E Road. And the comprehensive plan also includes a special policy which I've referred to a couple times. That's the parcel that talks about the multiple land use classification with the commercial office and institution uses. And it also contains a special policy requiring that the Palm Beach State College prepare a master plan for its development, which it has done and has been approved by the town council.
Hey, Jim, before you leave,
Yep.
before I forget, I was speaking to Howard Warren. He can't make it tonight, but he wanted me to pass on the fact that he is in favor only of commercial east of C, as it's said in the neighborhood plan. Now, I worked on the plan and I thumbed through it tonight, and I can't find that
No.
east of C.
Well, that's been mentioned several times over the last couple of years, and I tried to research it to the extent that I could. The only place that I found that was back in 2008. The town council members were given a list of questions related to future development that were going to be used in part as a basis to draft the town's comprehensive plan. And that question was asked of the town council at that point, and the council gave a mixed review on it.
Yeah, I think Dennis and I were on the council at that time, and what we were looking at then, before the college and all of that came in here to muck up the plan that we were working on then, was to have a town center around Tangerine from C over, sort of core with nothing else around it. So that never went anywhere as far as I remember.
Right. It does not, that language that is not.
I couldn't find it, it never been planned.
In any of the town's planning documents. That's the only time that I can find that it was brought up.
But anyway, that was from Howard's.
Can you tell me what the reason is to extend Tangerine from A to E? Why they contemplating doing it?
Dennis can probably answer that better than me, but I believe it was to create essentially an alternative to Southern Boulevard, where residents of the town could travel east or west without having to go out on the south.
And also a demarcation line for commercial extent going north.
It was basically just, when you talk to DOT, they want people going on the 7, who are going to go with the 10. They don't want people going out on the 7, they're going to go 2 blocks and they go left. So by having, the other comments was, let's put an access road like along Pony Lake Boulevard. So you've got, so we would be essentially making Southern Boulevard along City Roads an 8-lane road, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So by having Tangerine, and it doesn't go through to A, it stops at D, because the college doesn't want it going through their property, which I understand. So this would essentially then become a corridor through which commercial could be built. And instead of like every strip mall that you go through anywhere in Florida, when you drive down the street, all you see is a sea of parking with a bunch of little stores back up. And that's not, I don't like that look. I don't think anybody likes that look. So the look would be in Loxahatchee Roads is when you drive by, you'll see the backside of stores. Because which I think would be a good thing to see, because then on the front side would be a Main Street with parallel parking or angled-in parking, and the parking then, for people who want to go to those stores, would then be designed where the loading docks are. So it's more of a community look feel as opposed to, let's go down to the strip mall and find, so
Jim, I got a question. Can you touch on the buffer residential uses? Can you explain more to that? What, is that gonna be RR5 or is that gonna be higher density type housing? And is that gonna be a requirement? Because you developed 180 acres so far and don't have any of that so far.
Well, I mean, there's not too much detail in the plan about what that means, but the way that I look at that is that if you have a residential area and you have a non-residential development or property come in next to it or approximate to it, you make sure that you have some landscaping and some separation between uses, and maybe have access points that don't conflict with each other. Look carefully at the lighting on the non-residential to make sure that it doesn't intrude upon the residential parcels. Techniques like that. There aren't really any specifics in the plan, but making sure that land uses are consistent with each other, compatible with each other, and buffered from potentially incompatible uses are all recurring themes throughout the plan. Now we can get more specific when we write our land use plan amendments that are going to come from this process. The most specific language in the plan now is the requirement on that large parcel that there be a 300-foot buffer between the non-residential uses and the uses on the north side of Pleasant Canal.
Problem, a generic term like that, when they use buffer, there are going to be many types of buffers, from physical buffer, which could be, wall and vegetation, to transitional, which could be spacing, to use buffers, which could be a downsizing of uses based upon the commercial to the residential.
Does anybody know or have asked if the majority of residents of Waxahachie want all this future commercial development? In other words,
Each of
the
these,
majority of the people that live here want to see a big shopping center go up over there, or are they happy driving down the road to Publix at Crestwood now? I mean, what's the drive to make these decisions, to change all this vegetation, to bring in all of this stuff that's never been here before? Is the community desiring it and saying we want to put a shopping center, or is the board making a decision that just the way the property ought to get developed?
well, I can tell you that both of those properties, those large properties, went through a process of 2 years where there were multiple public hearings, workshops, planning and zoning board reviews, and
I heard about the college, I've lived here since I was 12. I never heard about this other piece of big giant commercial development that you're planning on making here.
well, they
So
were
I'm just asking.
they were advertised. We have requirements for advertising in the code. They were advertised in the paper multiple times, advertised on the town website. The signs were posted on the properties.
Okay, that still doesn't answer the
And
question of
mail outs.
motivation of, is the town council wanting to develop it, or the majority of the residents of Waxahachie want to see it come? That's what my question is.
Well,
Not how it happened.
The
but
town
why it
council,
happened.
the town council voted on it after having multiple opportunities for the public to stand up.
Jim, the initiation is landowner initiation. That's where it starts.
So apathy in the community is why this happened, that if nobody objected?
That's not for me to say.
We have given it to new commercial.
It was there.
South of.
We said, okay.
Yeah, well, that's in the comprehensive plan now.
What are you limiting there? If you, the county property, there is no commercial part, where you limiting the new commercials, which
Well,
another example, commerce on the other hand, or?
no, we're talking about tangerine / citrus extended all the way across the full extent of the town.
They don't even line up.
Well, yeah, no, they don't, but, it goes like that a little bit, but that's the intent, is draw an imaginary line, if the right of way is not there, or the road is not there now. That's part of the reason that they put the language in there to extend the roadway all the way across, and keep commercial development to the south of that. If the roadway is not there, then I would say that we would draw an imaginary extension, and commercial could not expand over that. And it's not just talking about what the park is, it's talking about the entire extent of the town.
Denise had a question. Yeah, I just, you said, there were workshops for 2 years, but really, I've been, before you got here, as early as probably 2001, 2002, there were, these proposals went before the county. And it had, there have been, I couldn't even count how many workshops there have been over the years. And this has evolved. And, as you said, it is landowner initiated. But it also, the comprehensive plan played a part in this. and incorporation. Because when you incorporate into a municipality, you know, you have to have some commercial. You can't say you're not gonna have any. So there are a lot of issues. It's not just what the people want. It's, is there a need? Can the landowner, you know, prove in a need? You know, there's just a number of, you know, state laws that that govern here. It's not just a matter of saying, well, what do the people want there? It is, you know, it's kind of an iterative process. And I think we looked at, over the years, probably dozens of how many different plans did we look at? I mean, a lot of different plans, yes. And I think some, you know, everything from a motorhome park to.
But at least 48 from the Simon family alone.
Yeah, at least 48 different, yeah, you know, it goes back further than 2001, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Started in the early 90s.
Yeah, so this has been going on, and trust me, most of the residents, if they've been here, you know, they've had more than ample opportunity to come to workshops in town during the comprehensive plan. Was very proactive with workshops, bringing people in. I mean, you know, I know that there are some people now that are surprised, but it's not, it hasn't just been sprung on this community. It's been going on for longer than I've been here.
Yeah, there was good turnout for the incorporation of the comprehensive plan, but for those that remember, when we did the neighborhood plan, you wouldn't believe the turnout. We had great turnout. I mean, hundreds. We had a couple of what we call American assemblies, whatever that means. Assembly in America, I guess. But there was hundreds of people at those.
Yeah, I can remember a meeting we had, you know, down at the county commission when they first proposed, you know, which, believe me, it was a lot more intense than it is now. I mean, it was much more intense. I mean, it was, and there were probably 300 residents down there at the county, you know, speaking on this. So, yeah, we bussed them in. I mean, it was.
You know, if you really want to get historical, it goes back to Bensel and the fact that there was a town along this corridor.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the town, I don't know, it got approved but never activated.
Waxahachie Avenue. What do you think that's
I
there?
mean, you know, they've always
You can
looked.
answer the question for me then.
What? I don't know.
Well, when all
But
those-
somebody here can't, because there's a lot of
when all
people
those
here.
several hundreds of people were involved with the county, was the sentiment of the community that they wanted to see more commercial development.
The sentiment of the community at that time was that the proposed development was too intense. Okay? So there's been a kind of an iterative process where the landowner has presented multiple, I mean, you know, like you said, 49 from the, you know, 4 public workshops at which people were given an opportunity to come back and say what they wanted, and quite frankly, I felt that when the college proposal came through, that was far and away the preferable parcel.
To an RV.
Exactly.
The lesser of the two evils.
Or just plain old offices. I
The
mean, you know.
reality of the situation is people have property rights
Mhm.
and they can initiate uses for their property. And I think everybody was reconciled to the fact that Southern Boulevard was the major east-west corridor, and that the big parcels that were bordering Southern Boulevard were going to have development rights. And the question was, how do we recognize that we've got to have commercial? We really don't want it spot located throughout the town blocks, Waxahachie Road. The corridor was the logical place. It already had some commercial. It was going to be where the county, before we incorporated, it was going to be where the county was going to approve the development.
Yes.
In fact, I think that when the town was formed, and Bill or Dennis probably know this better than I do, didn't the county require us to recognize some rights that Simon property had already gotten from the county? I mean,
I can answer that, John. I was sitting in Richard Maychek's office in Tallahassee with one other committee member in our lobbyist. And Richard Maychek said, unless you give my grade school chum, Sandy Simon, what he wants on that 90 acres, you'll never get your incorporation.
Right.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
Yep,
Was that recorded somewhere, I hope?
There are witnesses.
No.
There are several witnesses.
There's some-
That would explain why that property is called out in our charter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line was that development was going to take place in the Southern Boulevard corridor. We already had a hospital, we had the Everglades, we had Yee's Commercial Center, we had the Shell Station. It was away from most of the residential and equestrian areas in the town. And everybody said, well, let's try to control it to a degree that it is compatible with us. And I think that in all these workshops and hearings, that was the theme, and I think it resonated, and we really did get some accommodation from people. They realized that there was a strong sentiment that it had to be compatible. It couldn't just be something they pulled off of State Road 7 and transplanted over here.
Yeah, well, the commercial goes even farther back then. How about Gary's and Jerry O's General Store?
Hey, can we continue on with the presentation?
That's been a while.
An interesting point real quick. How many residential plots are in this area? Did you say 80 something? Residential?
59.
80 units. I think that there was 52 or 53 or 58.
It seems like a lot of residential people that are gonna be impacted by commercial, if you ask me.
There's more residential.
Was that back there that was asking if you
There is
remember
on
Gary's?
Shelby.
Okay,
That's my
okay,
dad.
I'm going on.
Gary, you were asking who remembers Gary's?
Oh, yeah.
That's my dad.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I remember eating
We just
there.
have a couple more
Very
elements
amazing.
to run through that have policies, then you can get back into the discussion. In the transportation element, there's considerable language about developing a greenway and equestrian trail system and encourage connectivity between parcels and along those lines, encourage joint right-of-way use and cross access agreements. Conservation gets into buffering and the promotion of the rural natural environment. Recreation and open space talks about encouraging a public equestrian facility like the Grove Park. And the use of the greenway and trails to provide linkages to various uses throughout the town. And to also pursue connections between the equestrian trails, Loxahatchee Groves Park, and the Wellington Trail system.
That is being worked on. Slowly, but we're working on it.
Okay, now we'll open it up to questions and comments. And I specifically would like to hear some comments about the types of non-residential uses and the locations of those uses along the corridor, if you have any thoughts on that, and also whether or not you feel that we should pursue the policy of extending citrus and tangerine across the town, keeping in mind that as the situation exists now, it will end at the college and not extend all the way through to a road extended. And also, if you are afraid that conflicts among land use will arise, we certainly like to hear about that.
First comment is with the extension of citrus and tangerine. After all roads get paved, what's the necessity? People can go and collect the canal and come up Beaver to access everything that's gonna be there instead of another bunch of property and have to buy up properties to build roads, and it's really gonna be that much more beneficial to drive up to like.
Well, I mean, there already has been discussion at the council level as to whether or not that policy should be revised. So, I mean, it seems to be going in that direction.
Hey, Jim, eventually, you gotta go back to recognizing that D from Okie to Southern is the main north-south Okie to Southern connector for this town. And council's gotta start I'm gonna bring this up in the retake meeting. The town's got to start looking at doing something with D, and whether the extension of Citrus Tangerine is actually a opened up dirt road, a paved road, or whatever road, the line itself ought to be on the map to designate the northern extent of any non-residential impacting type materials. But we gotta get D down. It's got, it's, I think, impacting the least, as a road, would impact the least number of residents. But one of the biggest things with the college and these two commercial, industrial, or not industrial, what's the other, institutional uses at D is that Ron Jarrell mentioned something the other day and made me thinking, I got to thinking, and I took what he gave me and I came up with a wild plan, which is, when I think it's dangerous, I've told Mark this before, take and make it a West A road on the west side of A Canal, bring it down, tie it into the commercial and that, and I've joked about this in the past, but I'm serious this time, blow the bridge at B. I'm not kidding. With this new road, getting rid of the bridge at B, developing D, I think we've solved the vast majority of traffic impact on the vast majority of residents in Loxahatchee Groves. Another thing is that the developer that's got the guest property might be amenable to this West A road thing because it would give him or her, or it or them, a road. And if they develop it one unit for 2.5 acres or whatever, there's, to me, the affordable housing. So there's a lot to go on with this. We're just, we're still a young town, and we're feeling around for this. Whether or not Citrus Tangerine ever gets to be a road, but it ought to be the line, because then on the other side of that, you've already seen your equestrian communities, you got those outlined on Citrus, and all of the residential north, mainly north of Tangerine and Loxahatchee Avenue. That little parcel there by the school district, what to do with that? The council, I think, has probably got to start looking at the commercial that's been approved or tentatively approved or being built and come up with a maximum number for the whole corridor. And when it's hit, that's it. So, there's an awful lot of stuff to still be thought about.
Which bridge are you talking about?
B.
B and.
That's a joke.
The only bridge that I know of.
I thought so, I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, yeah. Actually, if you look at it, no, if DOT ever inspected that, they probably have to blow it anyway.
They're talking about replacing.
No, not replacing.
No, they're just.
I think based on the comments of this gentleman said about, pushing the traffic to Collecting Canal, you need to poll the residents on Collecting Canal if they're interested in that or not. Because that would be dramatic impact on that road.
We all drive by your place.
That's right.
And she got a slingshot.
I'd like the comment that Mr. Fleischman made, I think we heard it in the audience, is this whole idea of transitional. And I think if we look at some of the communities to our east that are on Okeechobee, speaking of Okeechobee now, and the horrendous push for people to have something on Okeechobee, I think we might think of something along the lines of Strathmore Gate. In other words, a fourplex type housing development with a lot of open space. So it would be something that would be a transition from a pretty abrupt transition from the 1 and 5, to Okeechobee. But still, the folks on Okeechobee could then have a choice. So it's not going to be somebody on a 2.5 acre slot trying to get out on what will be one day a 4-lane highway. Is the appropriate turning and appropriate signage, we can have then easy enough access, both north and south, down to the letter roads, and then get out. I think as we just heard, Clayton Canal is not a good option for the town, because we know we're gonna have massive traffic tie-ups on a 6-lane southern. And the place where the DOT and Port Highway Patrol is gonna direct traffic is gonna be through our town. So I think if we have a street from east to west, Tangerine, Citrus, whatever the name of it is, that could certainly, in an emergency type situation, serve as a way to keep traffic moving on Southern, but not bring it into the town. And I think along there, you know, if there's one thing I learned when working on the county's planning committee, land use advisory board, is that when people come in with good ideas and it's shared with the county and enough emphasis is put on it with enough money, that nice things are built. City Place, Apicoa, you know, that just wasn't one developer, that was a whole bunch of people coming together to make decisions. So it's certainly not something that's going to happen in the next 10 years, maybe not even the next 20 years. But the town puts it in their land use and puts it in some sort of document that takes a vote of several people and a committed group of people in the community to get together and help make these decisions. I think we'll have put into place. This isn't just new. That's something I thought of. This came up during the visioning process that we had, where we sat in the school and had little vials in our hands. You know, sort of like a Frank Luntz thing. You know, whether or not we liked the pictures on the screens. And so so we didn't like the high-rise lights and things like that. We didn't like angled-in parking, as opposed to parallel parking. So it's something that I think is a good starting point for the town. And we just need to work on it more.
Now, along those lines, Dennis, you mentioned about property owners getting together and making proposals or coming up with plans. The town recently created this multiple land use category, and if you look at each of the large blocks created by the letter roads, there's approximately 100 acres between southern and connecting between each of the letter roads. It would be possible for the property owners in that square, that 100-acre square, to make a proposal under the multiple land use category to come up with essentially a small neighborhood plan for that entire block. For example, over on the east part of the town, we have all those equestrian uses existing. They could create a 100-acre equestrian oriented community using the future land use category and incorporate that into the common. That's an example of how that could work in the town's planning process.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what they both were saying, and taking the city place idea and the question park idea. I think it's important whatever we do in this town going forward that we keep in mind the rural ag theme, that anybody coming in and developing their neighborhood remembers, and their real estate agents remember, and their developers remember, this is an agricultural community and there are requirements that those people be informed of what they're moving into. Just because they move in and then 2 years later there's 200 of them and they want to change the community, we need to make sure that doesn't happen because a new set of people came in. We need to make sure that what this town wants now stays in effect for the new development.
Please use the designation ag res. I don't grow
Yeah,
anything,
I'm
I don't
just
grow
saying rural
anything except older.
community, Okay, I'm just, okay, ag-res, but I realize it may not be ag-res, that's why I'm using the rural concept
Yeah.
for the town, because it's not all going to be ag-res, we're gonna have PUDs and everything else throughout this development, but they can be, as Jim was saying, they can have an equestrian theme, they can tie in with our equestrian trails, and that's why I use the rural concept.
Todd and I won a tractor supply, right?
That's a little impact.
The long drive, though, sure he said.
That you say you were
And an indoor shooting range.
proposing
They have
a
a
large
lot of traffic.
equestrian
Well,
facility or?
Well, let me just go back. Okay. If you look at this, this is the map that we discussed earlier that shows the agricultural parcels. Yeah, that's right, that's the example. But the great majority of the equestrian agricultural properties are up just north of the park and to the east. Taking this multiple land use designation that the town has adopted in the comprehensive plan, the property owners there could all get together and come up with what I'm calling a neighborhood equestrian land use plan for that area. And that could occur on every one of those square blocks that are formed by the roads. So, I mean, they can come up with their own theme, they can come up with that mix of land use, of course, it's got to be approved by the council.
Well, the one block here, east of that is really as large as the lot.
Yeah, well, the multiple land use category has a minimum threshold of 50 acres. So if it's 50 acres, it could look at incorporating the land use category.
Jim, can you jump a road with that? I see there's where the Peloponnese are over there on the east side of that.
Well,
You can join in with the people on the west side.
Yeah, there's no.
But you said between roads, but you can,
Well, I was just using that as an
Oh, okay.
example, using that as.
as long as they're contiguous.
It's a well-defined area that has borders.
Okay.
Would be easy to do. There's no limitation as to how big it can be, and it can jump. Yeah.
Oh.
Who else would like to provide input?
I have a question. How many residential homes are going to be affected by this? So, I mean, the way I'm looking at it, Tangerine, Citrus, all those homes are going to be affected? And people live in all those homes?
Yes, those are properties that, well, I can't guarantee that they're not vacant. But,
Okay.
those
I'm
are
pretty
properties
familiar
that
with
have
them.
Residents on it.
Right. Okay, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of those homes.
Okay.
Okay, so I can tell you a lot of them aren't vacant?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that they are. You said, can I guarantee that there's somebody living there?
Okay.
So we're talking about East Citrus, not North Citrus.
So
So
this is
Citrus,
like
Tangerine.
what
So
we're
the
talking
vast
about.
majority
Citrus
of the
and
homes
Tangerine
are
in
north
between
of
D Road and
Tangerine.
F Road, and also on the west side of D Road.
Yeah.
The homes that back up to like the AG, I know people live in them as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So how many residential homes are we talking about?
You said it was 59 slots with 81 units or something like that?
Okay, and then do you have the Okeechobee Road info with you by any chance? How many residential homes are there on Okeechobee that people actually live in? Was it 9, did you say, at the Okeechobee Road meeting? 11.
I think somebody did miss, I think Mr. Cole.
Quite a difference, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not proposing anything at this point that I think is going to affect those neighborhoods, but.
Okay, I think it probably would affect all those people.
What would affect?
Commercial, right in front of their homes?
Well, if you look at, yeah,
I'm looking.
okay, look at the commercial.
Look, Jim, look between.
I know, but like the
look between
cruises
D-
have been there forever. I mean, Randy and Rudy and, you know, I mean, where,
Okay,
they've been there forever. The people that live behind the AG, they've been there forever.
right, well, look at this, I mean, the commercial designations already exist, with the exception of this little area right in here.
Right, Nancy Drysdale's property. Okay, so you don't have, and she has a big sign on her property that says it's, you know, possible commercial zoning.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? I thought it did. Okay, I'm sorry.
It just says I've been in business
35
35 plus
years.
Oh,
years.
okay, all
I'm
right.
local.
I thought it had. There you go. I thought it said possible commercial.
Nice.
Well,
I'm sorry.
the policy in the plan says that,
Okay, well, why isn't
commercial
that
south
one commercial if all the other ones are?
Well, that's where the buffering and transition
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
in.
the policy in the plan says to keep commercial south of Citrus and Tangerine. And the plan also, in many places, talks about buffering and compatibility with neighboring properties.
Okay.
So those are issues that, first of all, if you're talking about the properties right in here, those properties would have to come in for a future land use plan amendment and a zoning change first.
Okay.
And then once that happened, they would have to come in and get a site plan approval, during which specific buffering compatibility techniques would be addressed. We also have the ability to talk about those during the land use plan amendment by making special policies with a land use plan amendment that would address buffering. So you can, the way the town's comprehensive plan is written, we can put controls in earlier than most jurisdictions do.
Okay, so my next question is, are you gonna send out letters to all of those homeowners that live on Tangerine and Citrus and let them know?
Well,
I mean, it's kind of
if there's-
comparable to the people that say they didn't know about the college. I mean, I knew about the college a long time ago, I'm not trying to get into that, but are you gonna let all those people that live in those homes know about it?
If there's a specific future land use map amendment, we have to notify all property owners within 1,000 feet.
Yeah, when I was on the council, I tried to get that moved to 2,500 feet, and it
And-
never went through.
You could really consider the fact that you have all those homes there versus the 11 or 9 people that actually live on Okeechobee, and you already have city water and sewer run right along Okeechobee, and you don't have a drainage issue, and,
For doing what? Putting commercial on Okeechobee?
yes.
No, good, let's split the town.
Make a main street in the town,
We've
a
got
main street.
Where?
You
Where's
have,
Southern
that would
Boulevard.
be a south
That's not a
street.
main street.
It would be a south
That's an
street.
expressway.
Okay.
Like he said, it's an expressway, it's gonna be 6 lanes, it's gonna be dangerous, you're gonna have garbage trucks driving down it, you're gonna try to get to these stores and you're gonna get hit.
So
I
we
mean,
put
he made a
commercial on
good point.
Okeechobee, it goes to
It's
6
com-
lanes, and we
it's-
can't go from the north part of Loxahatchee to the south part of Loxahatchee.
Okay, we all, let's let the people make their comments.
No,
Let the debate.
I'm just, you know, I'm just bringing up the point, I wanna make sure that you've considered it,
Okay,
because,
is what you're saying that you would rather see commercial development on Okeechobee than on Southern?
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
I got another question here real quick. According to what Dennis said, is Tangerine would almost be like a main street where the front of the stores would face Tangerine. All right, how would you deal with something like that when you have 50-something houses on Tangerine? Now you're proposing that the entrance and exit from these commercial developments would actually go onto Tangerine, right in front of these people's houses. How are you gonna have a buffer and do that? It just seems kind of ludicrous to me. I mean, I don't see how that could possibly work.
Yes, I mean,
I agree.
the decision has not been made that Tangerine will be a Main Street, number one. And the decision, the only language in the plan now is that Tangerine be extended the full extent of the focal limits. There's been some discussion as to whether or not that is still what the town wants to see. And that's part of the reason that we're conducting these workshops and going to be preparing comprehensive plan amendments. Whether or not, if and when we get to the point where commercial is approved in that area, we certainly will have to address the issue as to whether or not we want that to be the main entrance to commercial. I think that's debatable.
I mean, I know this may not be the thing that was going on earlier today. Everybody said that the drainage ponds and all that should be near Collecting Canal. But if you put it between those houses and Southern Boulevard, it would act as a buffer, and you could have drainage there. So those people with the residences there, 50, 60 of them, wouldn't be affected by the commercial, and they got a big buffer between to Southern Boulevard.
Still a good possibility. I'm sure that that's on their map. I hope.
And they sit low already.
Well, that's where it should be pushed to be, is right there.
Keep water in it all year round, put in a boardwalk, and call it a nature park. Yeah, catfishing will turn into a living.
Connection of tangerine and citrus, the one that I said about if you have a problem with the road, I'm telling you, you don't want to be a part of that road if there's a problem. The trucks come down there, there's only 8 people that live there on the western property. And if you have an accident on Southern, and you start getting all the trucks from the quarry coming and looping around and coming down the road, I promise you it's not a pleasant.
We never went to the.
You can't let your kids out, you can't let your dog out.
We've kept it vacant for.
The dust is so
Never done anything.
terrible. No, it doesn't, but the roads, they tear the road up so bad. 20 trucks go down the road and turn on a dirt road and make it rain. They don't fix the road for, you don't never know when.
Eventuality.
Well, please, one conversation at a time.
So to let us pick it up road exists.
That's the eventuality.
Where it affects the
Whether or not we knew that,
that live there.
you know,
The road doesn't even match up.
he said, decides the college wanted to go on that piece of property. The landowners themselves went ahead and said, we want some, we want to do. We've never went to Canada to do anything with that property. Just
That doesn't really make much happiness for the
we never
8
said.
people that live along there.
Please,
Shopping in stores.
sir, we have
I'm
some
very
civility. We need to hear one person at a time. We're not gonna pick it up otherwise. People
Sorry.
can't hear. Go ahead, sir.
So, you know, along that 8, you know, the people that own these 8 properties along there, it's not a pleasant deal when the trucks are, you know, as he was saying about per accident or something, which doesn't happen very often, but still, to create traffic down your road where there's 8 people that live, that don't even live there, and most of them are seasonal, to have all that influx of traffic to come down your street for no reason is the same thing that they did to us on F Road, where they told us they were gonna put the bridge in temporarily, and then it's still there. They came and made a sign off on something that said that they were gonna, it was a temporary bridge until Folsom was finished, and never came true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said,
Before my time.
that policy is going to be revisited as part of this process. I mean, it's obvious that there are pros and cons there, and town council's going to look at those and make a decision.
Anything else on that, sir?
As far as the commercial along just south of Citrus, with the people that are affected by the hospital property there in that small block that they've already taken up through the hospital and donated us into Royal Palm on the corner, how are you going to put the same sort of requirements on the east or south of Citrus on those people as the other section when it's already been gobbled up slowly to kind of just isolate those three people, doesn't seem like it's very, very good for, if you're going to develop commercial, why wouldn't you develop that whole block?
We're talking about where the,
F Road and,
work, with farmer's daughter and the.
yeah, that whole block there, it's been gobbled up by.
Yeah, well, that,
So if you keep the commercial south of Citrus, you're really hindering those three people that are left, or four people that are left, that didn't get gobbled up by the hospital or where it went from Folsom. Well, we used to be a block from Folsom to F Road. Now we're a block from, basically from the hospital, including Vincent Ramos. Those are only four people affected in that block that are left. They haven't been gobbled up, so to isolate them from no commercial kind of seems.
so you're talking about properties north of Citrus?
Yeah, there's, you know, I mean, four properties there if you consider Vincent Ramos one.
That line up with the north extent of the hospital, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Then you're impacting people on the other side of collecting land.
Not really, because you've got the road, the canal, and then a road.
Jim, the hospital is institutional, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. It's a combination of both, because they have condominium offices and a lot of. But from that house, you're right.
It's set way back to 6th Court North.
So you're saying not to extend Citrus to the
I
east?
would say extend it down on that block, where there's only 3 or 4 people remaining, which used to be a block, all the way from Folsom until the extension went through. And now we have, what, 4 people left in one block.
And allow those properties to the north to be commercial?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't see why they connect to the hospital, they connect to the farmer's daughter, they connect to the people that are building the office, the doctor's office building. Why wouldn't that area be considered?
North of the Citrus Tangerine line.
Yeah. Well, they certainly have the, property owners certainly have the ability to come in and petition.
Anybody else with a comment or a question?
I think moving commercial north of the Citrus Tangerine line anywhere is wrong. You're losing your transitional buffer capability going to people. There's a lot of people just on the other side of collecting canal right there that would be facing commercial. There's Merle on the corner, on the southwest corner of F and collecting canal. There's the another property that's equestrian on the corner of Citrus and F. So, yeah.
That's very minimal though, isn't it?
Depends upon what the commercial is you put there. The other thing is that we could just take all those properties and level upon detail. Let's, if we're gonna get silly, let's get silly.
Yeah.
For clarification purposes, I just want to make sure how you're using the term commercial. I'd like to hear your definition of commercial, because we have equestrian facilities that are commercial. So I'd like to hear the distinction on what you're talking about for commercial here.
Well, I'm talking about commercial and commercial low office.
Okay, so we're talking off commercial low office, and we're not talking any commercial that would impact farms, or
Well, I mean,
just making sure how we're using the commercial, because it's an all-encompassing.
there are certain activities that you can do in the AR district
Because I haven't heard that discussed there at all, with the use of the term commercial.
Well, when I say commercial, if you look at this sheet,
Right,
there are two land use categories.
right.
And that's what I'm talking
And we're sticking strictly to this. It's not gonna change somewhere down the road and something else is gonna magically appear on this.
about.
Well, because that happens.
It won't magically appear, but I mean, it's possible that changes will occur over time. We're not gonna see one now.
Well, and the reason I ask that is when you say no commercial beyond a certain point then, and we're sticking to, we say no commercial based on these definitions.
Yes. When it says no commercial.
The other side of that.
North of Tangerine or Citrus, it's talking about
Based on
those
this
land use
definition.
categories, yes.
Jim, one last question. This is a fantastic suggestion about the State Road 80 drainage going around Loxahatchee Avenue to protect these smaller homes on Tangerine. How is the best way to lobby state DOT to aim them towards thinking about this really strongly?
Location.
Besides showing up at their meeting, can we do it proactively ahead of?
Well, I've been in contact with the lead engineer on the project, and he told me that he would be willing to come out and attend a workshop or whatever situation like this.
Yeah.
Make a presentation and ask the questions.
Because if we can get that and then some farther back along Collecting Canal.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask him.
Came up, that was a great idea.
I can ask him, if he'd be willing to do that. That's all. Yeah.
There was a resident on Collecting Canal that sent me a request to ask for sound barriers.
Sound barriers on Southern?
Right.
You mean like military? With the walls?
Don't kill the messenger.
Only if there's barbed wire on it.
So you asked.
Marsh, that's a gated community.
I asked. You asked. I told them I would ask. I wasn't in favor of it. It doesn't sound rural. Not exactly rural. You asked.
And again, Jim, just for clarification, could you give me an example of a limited public facility that's allowed under commercial road use?
A limited public.
A facility that's allowed under commercial road use? How does Vinceramos? Is that a public facility?
No.
Public facility, I suppose.
Because I'm just curious, if we're saying no, we're saying no more Vinceramos, is that what we're saying?
A library could be, I'm not in specifically talking about that.
Well, that's why I'm-
Limited public facility,
Because you're asking us.
it could be a library.
Excuse me, I can't hear what you're saying. So that's why I'm asking for those specifics tonight, when you're asking people to comment, and we're doing commercial low use, and we're saying, no, some people are suggesting, no, commercial low use, and yet I read, limited institutional public facility allowed. I want clarification.
Well, the best way to get clarification is to go to the CLO zoning district. The zoning code takes these general definitions and it provides a much more specific list of uses that fall under these categories. And
So really what we're commenting.
I didn't bring the zoning code with me, but.
No, I understand, so what people, I just want to make people aware of what they're commenting on this evening. They may not really be aware of the specifics that they're commenting on when they're saying no to something beyond a certain point. They may not realize what they are really saying no to.
Okay, the most specific that we get is to look at what uses are allowed.
Right. Okay, that's information that has not been provided.
No, I did not.
Okay, I just want to make the public aware of that. All right, thank you.
Jim, on the next one of these meetings, I've got one at home, I don't know what it's called. You got a category and then it's just list, yes, no, special exemption. That's
called land use matrix.
land use matrix. If you have a couple of those available, so, you know, Burger King, no, massage
Right.
parlor, yes.
Exactly.
All things.
Those tables are.
Well, there is. For purposes of a public workshop, that would be a page that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd go there.
Because it's amazing when you go to RR or to a rural residential or ag res and you look those up, what is allowable? There's some things in there.
Something that you have to remember too is that even though these things are approved today, and someone made this comment, it may take 20 years before you see the ground being turned to do anything. I mean, look how long ago the council approved the southern crossings between E and Loxahatchee Avenue. I mean, there were projects that were approved between A and G and the gas station that now there's a commercial property for sale sign there, but there was a building that was approved that was presented to council. So, you know, a lot of this will take years and years and years.
Jim, there was some talk about no commercial development north of Tangerine. Can you tell me how much commercial and institutional has been approved north of Tangerine?
North of Tangerine?
Yeah, specifically near B Road. You know how many acres that is?
Nothing north of Tangerine.
Well, doesn't the college and the institution go over to collecting canal?
Oh, well, the college, yeah, the college we're not classifying as commercial.
Okay, but can you tell me how many acres that is total?
75.
No, I'm talking about from Tangerine north, north of that. Would that be 50 acres of their portion, 40 acres?
That's a pretty good guess. I would say between 40 and 50 acres.
And what about on the east side of B Road that's been approved for commercial also?
You gotta subtract a 300-foot buffer.
Yeah, that's 40 acres less the 300-foot buffer.
Plus the nursery.
Oh, yeah, nursery's a nursery.
Yeah, well, the institutional use is planned to be north of Citrus.
Half of that nursery's in the canal anyway.
The commercial uses, 40 acres or so are south.
So we're not, when we talk about no going north of Tangerine, we're not including the buffer. The buffer can be past that.
The buffer has to be adjacent to collecting canal on that property.
No, I know, but when we say, people said not north of Tangerine, the land can be commercial, but it's gonna be a buffer. Would that be a fair statement?
Run that by me.
East of C Road.
Hey, yeah, anything that's gonna be north of Tangerine, it can be commercial, but it's gonna be a buffer.
Oh.
Is that correct?
Okay, yeah, that's right. You're probably talking about the discussions we had with the PUD ordinance. Yeah, that's true. If there was an approval for a commercial property that actually extended north of Tangerine, the actual commercial development portion would still have to be located south.
Okay.
The rest of it would be buffer, yes.
But that doesn't fit in with what was just presented by Mr. Perry. He was showing commercial north of Tangerine and south of Tangerine at the last council meeting.
I'm just wondering in the future how you're gonna stop somebody else from doing that when you just approved it on the first one.
And I couldn't even do a land use application if that was the case, because I'm north of Tangerine.
And is Tangerine a line that's drawn with a ruler or drawn by the developer and it goes on?
In that case,
Tangerine doesn't go.
On by rules.
Citrus. That's proposed by the developer and approved by the council. Because there is no right of way.
So in order for them to be legal with their commercial, they could draw Tangerine behind their northern commercial property,
Well,
if it was approved.
yes, they could, but they have a maximum size of a commercial parcel can be. I mean, if they go like that, they only have a total of 40 acres that they can use for commercial. So, I mean, if they meander the line way north, they still have to fit the 40 acres underneath that line.
Well, at one point, there was a discussion that Tangerine should not be any further than 700 feet north of Southern.
No, it wasn't that Tangerine shouldn't be 700 feet, it was that commercial should not be 700 feet north of Southern.
And does this last property on east of B Road fit into that?
I haven't looked at the plans yet, but I believe it does.
You talking about red clover?
No, I'm talking about Mr. Perry's presentation at the council meeting.
On the one there between B and C, that thing there is the assisted living facility north of the Tangerine line, and the commercial is south of the Tangerine line, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's, in that, whatever it is, mud HUD thing there.
Yeah, that'll be specifically determined during the zoning process where Tangerine's going to go, and they just filed an application to enter that
Yeah,
process.
'cause I remember in the neighborhood plan it was 660 feet north of Southern, but Southern seems to be moving to the north, so.
It'll hook to the canal in a minute.
But it wouldn't move north if you made it on Okeechobee on the main street. It's already the main street.
No, it's not.
Perhaps Jim and
That's
Mr.
more
Wood
out
can
here.
speak to this question, but
Wasn't
he
even
brings up a
there.
good example and it was
Middle
property that was
I'm
presented
wishing
on
you.
East B Road, which Mr. Perry presented,
Yeah,
a
way to get
beautiful
in.
property with a 300-foot buffer and the equestrian trail in the back. What I'd like to know is when these developers come in and they present these projects, and I mean, it was beautiful what they presented, it looked good for what they presented, and it was nice seeing the buffer and the equestrian trail. My question is, how much of that stays? So the buffer seems to be something that's written in and must stay unless they come back to the town council and request it be removed in 20 or 30 years, correct? So something like the trail, is that like the buffer where that stays too? Or is that something they can change on their own? I'm just curious how the requirements.
No, they're going to have to do a conceptual master plan as part of the PUD that'll identify the basic development pods and the buffer areas, where the trails will go. Each of those pods, the commercial, two commercial pods and the institutional pods, when they come in for specific development, they're going to have to do a site, or they get specific. And the exact locations.
So those are like roads that when they put in their parking space in a road, my question specifically, so when they put in the trail, is a trail stay
Yes.
on the master plan, just like a road stays? Developers are saying this.
The master plan is going to be the governing document. And then when individual site plans come in, those site plans have to match the master plan.
And over time, any changes can be amended throughout the years. They can come before the P&Z and town council and request changes. So we could have something for 2 to 3 years, and then, by golly, 5 years later, they can come in and you get the right town council, and they could do away with the buffer and the buildings if they chose to.
They can always ask.
Yes, that's right, okay.
Okay, any other comments from anybody before we break up?
I'm just curious, how many people live close to Southern Boulevard that are at this meeting? Like, can I ask that question? I'm just curious.
Just north of Collecting Town.
No, in this affected area.
Like in this
How
affected area, how many people
are
live?
here that will be affected? There's a one person, one gentleman. And there's about 60 homes.
And it's gonna affect up front. It'll affect us.
Why, my question is, why is there no interest from the residents that are gonna be affected by this?
Were all these people notified that
Yep.
are gonna be affected? So
Yes.
all these people that live on
Individually.
Tangerine and Citrus and,
Individually by mail, 134 personal invitations were mailed
Do-
out.
do
that's a
you-
shame.
And in both workshops, we did the same thing with Okeechobee. Okeechobee had individual mailings.
Well, at the Okeechobee meeting, there were quite a few residents that did show up. But I really find it strange that, I know Mr. Morello's got property, Nancy Drysdale just left, this gentleman,
Oh, no, Nancy Drysdale's my mother.
She's still here, they're,
oh, okay.
That's my mother.
This
And I understand that.
yeah, he
But-
already took them.
But what, it seems like to me, why would somebody that lives on North Road be so interested in what's going on here?
Can answer that.
Try to answer.
Yeah, I will answer that, because the people from Southern Boulevard and Okeechobee come, everybody, if this is a town, we've incorporated this as a town, and we give feedback on the entire town. Now, I gave input on Okeechobee, but ultimately what happens is up to the town council. They ask for people to come and give input. And yes, those people from Southern Boulevard should be here, and they should be talking, and people should reach out to them again and make them aware. All I can say is this is a town I live in, and I have the right to come and speak to different areas. Right, exactly, and that's why I'm here. Because what happens on Collecting Canal, and what happens on Southern with that college, affects me on B Road and North Road. Okay, so what happens on one side of town can affect somebody on the other side of town, whether you realize it or not.
Well, this commercial, we may need to use it.
Well, I just find it hard to believe that with all the residents that live in this area, nobody's here, this gentleman is the only one. Well, I mean, I find that ridiculous. Are the people burnt out? I'm burnt out. I've listened to this crap for almost 40 years. And they shoved Okeechobee Road down my throat. Now we're stuck, and all the owners on Okeechobee Road are stuck with a property they cannot sell. It virtually is worthless. I'm caught in between two churches, and now churches aren't allowed on Okeechobee.
What do you mean you're not allowed?
You can't stop a church.
You can stop a church.
That's not what I was told.
You have to have the proper land use.
Right.
You can't stop a church from operating out of someone's house. But if a church wants to be constructed, they have to be consistent with the land use plan and the zoning ordinance. So, I mean, the answer to that is yes and no.
And I think land nobody's able to sell. Someone has 50 acres across from me, he put up for sale, he's got 80 acres, right on North Road, he put up for sale. Because everyone has their property for
I've sold
sale.
about 5 lots in Waxahachie in the past 3 months.
Pardon?
I've sold about 5 lots in Waxahachie in the
Good
past
for
3
you.
months. I mean, but nobody wants to buy anything on Okeechobee. I mean, and Nancy Drysdale could tell you the same thing. It's, nobody wants to live on Okeechobee. I mean, I'm sure you probably wouldn't.
Don't ask me that question, you're asking the wrong person. I have no problem living on Okeechobee.
It's a pretty busy
I don't know
road.
how you can make that statement if you've never done it.
It's a really busy road.
I'm not gonna get into it, but I've already asked somebody in my family to look at property on Okeechobee Boulevard, so.
Okay, for the good of the order, are there any
Perfect.
more comments relative to either
I've
road?
got a
Yes, you
good
need to see her.
I've got a bridge for sale too.
I got a good
There's a
realtor
lot of
over
properties
here.
for sale.
Okay, well then, thank you for coming, we appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All I